Let me start with a question that most people never dare to ask out loud. What if the greatest spiritual secret in history wasn't sitting in temples or scriptures, but quietly waiting inside you? Not above you, not outside you, not in the sky, not in a ritual, inside you. Sounds simple, right? But in the 14th century, saying something like that could get a man dragged into a courtroom, interrogated for days, and labeled a threat to the entire religious system. And that's exactly what happened. There was a Dominican friar, calm, sharp-minded, fearless, who started saying things the church wasn't ready for. His name was Meister Eckhart, and he wasn't trying to start a rebellion. He wasn't trying to tear anything down. He was simply speaking from what he felt in his bones, something he had experienced, not read. And that experience shook everything, because he said something that still rattles people today. God is not a distant king. God is the silent presence in your own awareness. And you can imagine how that went. Back then, the church controlled everything: your morals, your fears, your afterlife, your sense of worth. They were the gatekeepers of heaven. If you wanted salvation, forgiveness, comfort, direction, anything, you had to go through them. And then here comes Eckhart, basically saying, no, you don't. The bridge to the divine is already inside you. That idea didn't just challenge theology. It challenged power. And whenever truth threatens power, things get messy. But let's slow down. Let's talk about what he actually meant. And more importantly, why his dangerous teachings feel strangely familiar to you right now, in this moment. Because if you're watching this, chances are some part of you has always sensed there was something deeper going on in you. Something you couldn't explain but you felt, especially in moments of silence. Eckhart called that something the divine spark. A part of you that wasn't created, wasn't born, and will never die. Let's rewind a bit. The friar who dared to say God is in you. Centuries ago, religion painted God as a cosmic ruler sitting far away, watching you, judging you, rewarding or punishing you, depending on how well you played by the rules. But Eckhart didn't buy that. He studied, prayed, taught, lived inside the very structure that created that image. But what he found inside his own silence didn't match what the institution was preaching. For him, God wasn't a figure in the sky. God was the quiet awareness behind your eyes. He once said something that still gives people chills. The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. Do you feel the gravity of that line? It means you aren't separate from the source. You don't look up to find God. You look inward. The same awareness you're using right now to watch this video that open. Silent presence is the doorway he was talking about. Think about how threatening that was to an institution claiming to be the only path to God. If every human carries that spark inside them, then suddenly, no priest stands between you and the divine. No ritual decides your worthiness. No hierarchy controls your connection. You become your own sanctuary. And that was the real threat. Because people who realize their inner wholeness are not easy to control. What Eckhart saw in silence. Eckhart didn't base his message on scriptures or arguments. He spoke from experience, those wordless moments of stillness, where the chatter of the mind fades and something deeper rises. You know that feeling, right? Not the silence of a quiet room. The silence inside you. That sense of being fully present, no story, no self-image, no fear, just awareness. For Eckhart, that silence wasn't empty. It was overflowing with life. He said there is a ground inside the soul deep, untouched, pure, where the human and the divine are not two things. He didn't say, you can become divine someday. He said, you already carry that essence. Not figuratively, literally. He used a bold phrase, There is something in the soul which is uncreated and uncreatable. Meaning, the core of you is not a product of time, biology, or upbringing. It's the same spark that mystics in every culture pointed to. The Gnostics called it the divine spark. The Upanishads called it Atman, the inner self. Buddhism called it Buddha nature. Mystics everywhere called it the light within. Different names, same reality. Eckhart just said it inside Christianity, and that's why the alarms went off. He wasn't attacking religion. He was trying to restore it to its original depth, to remind people that the divine was never meant to be distant. It was always meant to be discovered. The birth of God within you. Here's where Eckhart gets wild, but stay with me, because this part is beautiful. He taught that creation isn't something that happened once in the past. It's happening right now, inside you. Every moment you become still enough, quiet enough, open enough. Something begins to move in that silence. He called it the birth of God in the soul. Not in a poetic way, in a real way. He said the same divine expression that shaped the universe is continuously being born within anyone who becomes still enough to receive it. He believed that every soul is like a room waiting to be cleared. When you stop filling it with noise, fear, and endless desires, it becomes a place where the divine can be born again. Not as a baby, as a realization, a recognition, that the awareness inside you is the same awareness behind all things, that the one who is seeking is the same as the one being sought. He talked about a German word, Gelassenheit. It means letting go, releasing, surrendering the small self so the deeper truth can rise. Not surrendering to someone else. Surrendering your noise so your depth can breathe. We don't get taught this growing up. We get taught to chase, to strive, to accumulate, to fill ourselves with opinions, fears, stories, labels. Eckhart said the opposite. To be full of things is to be empty of God. To be empty of things is to be full of God. He wasn't talking about rejecting life. He was talking about clearing the fog. When the fog clears, the light isn't created. It was always there. The fog just stops covering it. Why his teachings were dangerous. People often think Eckhart was called a heretic because he denied God or disrespected the church. But the truth is, stranger, he was dangerous because he made you free. If God is inside you, who needs a middleman? Who needs permission? Who needs to fear punishment from outside? Imagine the shock of realizing the divine doesn't live in buildings, but in your own stillness. Eckhart didn't make people dependent. He made them sovereign. And history shows us something clearly. Power structures never fear sin. They fear independence. The Inquisition accused him of blurring the line between God and the human soul. He stood in front of them, quiet and steady, and said, "I may err, but I am not a heretic." And here's the crazy part. He died before his verdict was announced. After his death, many of his teachings were condemned. But here's the thing about truth. You can burn books, erase sentences, silence voices, but you can't kill the silence inside people. It waits. It whispers. It returns. Just like you're hearing it now. Because chances are, you didn't click on this video by accident. Something in you recognized something in him. A familiarity. Like remembering something you've always known but never said out loud. The secret of prayer the church tried to control. Let's talk about prayer. For centuries, prayer was taught as a request. You speak upward, hoping someone in the sky hears you. But Eckhart turned that idea inside out. He said the most powerful prayer is born from a quiet mind. Not words, not requests, not begging, but stillness. When the mind becomes quiet, he said, prayer stops being a message sent outward. It becomes a state of being. You don't talk to God. You feel the divine move through you. He said something shocking. When the soul is silent, God speaks. Not through thunder, not through visions, through awareness itself. He believed true prayer is when the one who prays and the one being prayed to are no longer two separate beings. It's unity. It's communion. It's resonance. This kind of prayer doesn't make you dependent. It makes you awake. That's why it vanished from mainstream teachings. That's why it wasn't encouraged. Silent prayer makes you inwardly strong. Fear-based prayer makes you dependent. Eckhart chose the first, and that choice cost him everything. The God beyond God. Here's where Eckhart goes beyond anything people of his time could handle. He said, even the word God is too small. He spoke of the Godhead, the silent source behind all forms, all names, all images. If God is the expression, the Godhead is the silence behind it. If God is the wave, the Godhead is the ocean. If God is the sunbeam, the Godhead is the sunlight before it becomes a beam. He wasn't making God smaller. He was making the divine infinite, beyond shape, beyond belief systems, beyond language. The Godhead wasn't someone you imagine. It was the presence that exists before imagination. And he said something so bold, it still scares theologians. In the pure ground of the soul, the human and the divine are one, not similar, not connected. One. No wonder they panicked. Because a person who knows this truth cannot be ruled. They cannot be manipulated. They cannot be made afraid. They become still. They become centered. They become free. Why you're hearing this now? You might wonder, why does any of this matter today? Because the same illusion Eckhart challenged back then is still alive now. People still search outside themselves trying to find God, meaning, purpose, peace. They chase it through success, relationships, religion, philosophies, approval, rituals. But all of that is noise. Eckhart said the real journey starts when the noise ends. When you sit in stillness and realize you were never separate. You were never lacking. You were never alone. You were simply distracted. And here you are, listening to a message spoken 7 centuries ago, but meant for souls exactly like yours. Souls who are ready to remember. Let's continue where we left off. We talked about the inner stillness. Eckhart believed every soul carries, the place where the noise falls away, and something deeper begins to breathe through you. Now we go into what Eckhart said happens after that stillness is discovered. Because what he taught next is the part that really made the authorities panic. This is where everything flips. And this is where most people who listen to him today suddenly feel their entire life makes sense in a new way. The moment when awareness recognizes itself. Eckhart believed something extraordinary happens when the mind stops clinging to its stories and the self stops trying to defend, compare, or control. In that quiet space, a realization begins to rise, not as a thought, but as a direct experience. The awareness inside you is the same awareness behind everything. Not similar, not connected like 2 pieces joined by a bridge. He said it's one field of being, appearing through different forms. Imagine light shining through many windows. The windows aren't the same. Some are cracked. Some are tinted. Some are dusty. Some are clear. But the light? It's the same. You and I have different lives, different stories, different fears, different hopes. But the awareness looking through your eyes and the awareness looking through mine have the same origin. Eckhart said, when you see this clearly, your life changes instantly, not because anything outside shifts, but because your sense of I expands. You stop living as a frightened, limited character. You start living from the quiet center that never comes or goes. This is what he meant by the birth of God in the soul. Not the birth of a deity inside you, but the birth of recognition, the moment when the divine wakes up to itself through your awareness. It's not dramatic. It doesn't involve visions or lights or angels. It's quieter than a breath. It feels like coming home after years of wandering. It feels like remembering something you always knew. Why letting go is the doorway. Eckhart spoke often about letting go, not in a vague, motivational way, but in a precise, transformative sense. Most people think letting go means abandoning responsibilities or living like a monk. Not at all. For Eckhart, letting go meant dropping the constant mental grip you have on everything. Your fears, your past, your expectations, your identity, your need to control how people see you, your endless chase for validation. He believed the soul becomes scattered across the things it clings to. Every attachment pulls a piece of you outward. You know that feeling when your mind is all over the place, when you're emotionally entangled in everything, when your peace sits in other people's hands. Eckhart said, when you release those attachments not by force, but through awareness, you gather your energy back into the present moment. And in that presence, something extraordinary happens. The soul regains its unity. And when the soul regains its unity, the divine appears not as a belief, not as a theory, but as the quiet foundation of your own being. He said this state is like a room with no walls open, spacious, unbounded. When the room is cluttered, nothing new can enter. When the room is empty, it becomes a place where the divine can move freely. That's why he said, the empty heart can be filled with God. Emptiness wasn't a loss. It was readiness, freedom from fear. One of the most misunderstood parts of Eckhart's teaching is that he wasn't trying to create distance from life. He wasn't telling people to escape the world. He was showing them how to live without fear controlling them. Because if you believe the divine is outside you, far away, judging you, you'll always be afraid of doing something wrong. But when you realize the divine is your own awareness, that fear collapses. You stop worrying about punishment. You stop trying to earn worthiness. You stop chasing an external source of validation. You begin to live from inner peace rather than outer pressure. Eckhart believed this is what true freedom looks like. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but freedom from the inner chains that keep you small. Freedom from comparison. Freedom from insecurity. Freedom from the constant fear of not being enough. He said, when the soul becomes rooted in stillness, nothing outside can shake it. People can judge you. Circumstances can change. Life can shift suddenly, but that inner ground stays untouched, like the deep ocean beneath the waves. This is why his teachings have survived for centuries. They don't just speak to religion. They speak to the human condition. They speak to the person who lies awake at night feeling something missing. To the person tired of pretending to be someone they're not. To the person who feels a quiet pull towards something beyond their thoughts. The silent prayer that changes you. Eckhart's view of prayer completely reversed what people believed at the time. Most were taught to pray by asking, begging, or bargaining. But Eckhart said the most powerful prayer is not spoken. It's the silent state where you let go of your separate sense of self. He said, the most powerful prayer is a quiet mind. This wasn't metaphorical. He meant it literally. He believed that when your mind quiets down, you enter the same state from which creation arises. Think about that for a moment. He believed silence wasn't emptiness. Silence was the doorway to the place where the divine moves through you. In that silence, your desires soften. Your ego relaxes. Your thoughts lose their grip. Your heart becomes open. Your awareness becomes clear. And something begins to flow through you. Peace, clarity, presence, a sense of connection you cannot explain. This is why silent prayer was considered dangerous, because a person who finds this inner source no longer feels spiritually dependent. They no longer require someone else to connect them to God. They carry the connection within themselves. Silent prayer doesn't make you subservient. It makes you aware. It reveals that the divine isn't far away. It's the awareness watching your thoughts right now. The Godhead, the source beyond all images. Eckhart was brave enough to speak about something even deeper than God, something most religious teachers avoided. He called it the Godhead. He explained it like this: if God is how the divine appears through love, creation, compassion, movement, the Godhead is the root, the silent source, the pure being before any expression. He said the God people imagine a figure with attributes is still too limited, still shaped by human ideas. But the Godhead is beyond all concepts. It's the silent reality that gives birth to all things. It cannot be pictured. It cannot be named. It cannot be reached through imagination. You reach it by dissolving the I that separates you from it. When the soul becomes silent enough, the sense of being a separate person loosens. Then you become aware of the field behind everything, a presence beyond form, emotion, thought, and identity. He said that in this silence, the soul realizes, I and the source are not two. This wasn't ego. This wasn't arrogance. This wasn't saying humans should replace God. It was saying the deepest truth of your being isn't human. It's the same essence that moves galaxies, emotions, seasons, and stars. You aren't a spark separated from the fire. You are a spark of the fire. And when you see this clearly, life doesn't become dull. It becomes sacred. Every breath, every moment, every interaction, you start to see the divine in yourself and in everyone else. Why the church couldn't tolerate him. Now you understand why Eckhart was considered a threat. Not because he denied God. He didn't. He expanded God beyond every boundary. He made the divine too large to be contained in institutions, too close for control, too inward for hierarchy. If people realized God was within them, who would fear punishment? Who would rely on intermediaries? Who would obey out of spiritual insecurity? So when his teaching spread, it caused concern. People started feeling empowered. They started asking deeper questions. They became less afraid. And nothing destabilizes power faster than people who are no longer afraid. The Inquisition accused him of confusing the line between creator and creation. But Eckhart didn't confuse anything. He simply removed the artificial wall. To him, the divine wasn't an external ruler, it was the ground of existence. And the human soul wasn't a helpless creature, it was the expression through which the divine becomes conscious of itself. He didn't lower God. He raised humanity to its true height, his legacy that refuses to die. Even after they condemned many of his teachings, his words refused to disappear. Students copied them by hand. Monks hid them in libraries. Mystics passed them quietly from one generation to the next. And centuries later, his ideas resurfaced like seeds that waited patiently under the soil. They influenced John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, Nicholas of Cusa, Martin Heidegger, Carl Jung, modern writers on presence and awareness. And most importantly, they reached ordinary people, people like you. People who feel a pull towards something deeper than religion, something older than tradition, something silent but alive inside them. You didn't come to this message because of coincidence. You came here because you recognized the truth in it before you even heard the words. Something in you remembered, the inner whisper that brought you here. Let's be honest. You've always sensed there was something more inside you. not as a belief, as a knowing. Maybe it showed up in moments of silence. Maybe in heartbreak. Maybe during a long walk. Maybe when you realized the world's noise couldn't fill you. Eckhart would say that whisper wasn't your thought. It was your soul reminding you of its origin. The same ground he spoke about, the place untouched by time, is the same presence watching this very moment. It's not something you achieve. It's something you uncover. Something you stop covering up with noise. And once you sense it, even for a second, life never goes back to the old way. So what now? If there's one thing Meister Eckhart wanted people to understand, it's this: you don't have to go anywhere to find the divine. You don't need rituals. You don't need permission. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need a special moment. You just need stillness. Not the stillness of the world, the stillness of awareness. In that quiet space, something ancient wakes up. Something pure. Something untouched. And it doesn't arrive like a dramatic revelation. It arrives like a gentle remembering. Eckhart said, "Why do you look for God elsewhere? Seek him in yourself and you will find him." His message wasn't meant to rebel against religion. It was meant to restore the truth behind every religion, that the divine is not outside your reach. It's the core of your own being. And deep down, you've always known this. That's why you're here. That's why you listened. Because your soul recognized its own reflection. Eckhart didn't just speak to the people of his time. He spoke to every soul waiting for silence to reveal what words never could. He spoke to you. Thank you for listening.